Social Animal was $99. It's now completely free. If you'd like to get your hands on a copy of it, simply visit callmecare.com/social. But for now, please enjoy this video. So the other day, I posted a Chappelle Show inspired reel implying that the janitors who clean the gym in college athletics programs actually make more than the strength coaches that work in those gyms. It got some likes, we all had a good laugh, but it actually got me to wondering if this was really the case. So I researched the numbers, did the math, and I figured out exactly how much you're likely to earn as a janitor versus being a strength coach. And more importantly, I'm also going to give you my thoughts on what I think you should do to overcome this financial trouble, as a hint, if you decide that you're a glutton for punishment and you actually want to pursue a career in strength and conditioning. Step one of the process was gathering the data. I tried to establish a baseline starting wage for both jobs using widely available online data. For the janitors, I used LinkedIn Jobs, ZipRecruiter, Indeed, and Google Jobs, with the exception of one job with the LA Dodgers and another with the Loudoun County Public School System. All of the jobs were working with universities or colleges, and all of the jobs had been posted this year. I excluded any jobs that were not entry level. No managerial or supervisor positions were included, and these were all jobs that you can land straight out of high school with a GED or a high school diploma. Where the pay was a salary, I divided the annual amount by 48 weeks of work a year, 40 hours a week. Where the pay was hourly, I just multiplied the hourly rate by those same numbers to estimate an annual salary. I didn't include the value of any health or pension benefits for either type of job, janitors or strength coaches, but a lot of them did include this from day one. I've published the results in a Google Sheet, which you can access using the link in the description for this video if you want to see the raw numbers for yourself. I stopped looking when I got to 20 plus jobs. I used the median hourly and annual salary to estimate the starting wage of a janitor, which ended up coming out to $16.09 per hour for an annual estimated salary of $30,797. Estimating the strength coaching salaries were a little trickier because so few job listings publicly state the salary, and it's rarely immediately obvious which jobs are the entry-level positions that a recent graduate might be starting out on. The two biggest resources that I drew from were the most recent NSCA and CSCCa salary surveys, which again, I've linked to in the description for this video. Some weaknesses of these surveys. The NSCA survey is industry-wide, so there are numbers from pro sport, high school, tactical, and the general population pumping those numbers up. They tend to be lower in collegiate versus these other sectors. It does, however, provide an average salary for coaches with less than 5 years experience. So I use the average of all of these sectors to set the annual salary for a coach in year 5 of their career, which was a shade under $50,000. I then assumed that this was the product of a 5% annual pay bump for each of those 5 years, which gives us a starting salary for new graduates of $39,176, or just over $20 an hour if we assume the same 40 hours a week, 48 weeks a year. And that's fairly typical in my experience. Let me know in the comments if you disagree with that number. The CSCCa survey, though it was limited to just college, it was less useful as it provided salaries by band only, and the highest salary band, that being $250,000 a year or more, had no upper limit. However, it did note that 37% of the respondents to that survey earned $40,000 to $60,000 a year, and the average employment of a respondent to that survey was 10 years. So usually in a normal bell curve of distribution, you can expect 38% of the sample to lie 0.5 standard deviations either side of the mean. That's close to our 37%. So let's say that the mean is $50,000 and that a coach took 10 years of 5% pay bumps to get to that point. So if we reverse engineer that, that gives us a starting year 1 salary of $36,000 fresh out of university, which again is pretty much what I've seen and would expect based on my own career and also hiring entry-level strength coaches as a manager myself. Now, that number might seem a tad low, but we also need to remember that we're factoring in all levels of collegiate athletics into the CSCCa data. So not just D1, but D1 all the way through D3, JUCO, and NAIA. So You also have to consider all parts of the country. After this, I went ahead and I crunched the numbers using both sets of the coaching data, NSCA and CSCCa, alongside the janitors. So let's now look at how much each group makes over the course of their career. First up is the janitors. For the janitors, I made the reasonable assumption that they landed this job straight out of high school. I also assumed no break in employment throughout this time. They worked consistently through from the age of 18 to 65. The final assumption I made was an annual 3% increase in pay every single year. 1, to keep up with inflation, 2, to reward longevity, and 3, to presumably reward performance as you get better at doing the same job the longer you've been doing it. So taking that starting salary of $30,797 a year, if we increase that by 3% a year for 47 years, the ending salary is $119,955. Total career earnings over those 47 years, $3,091,891. The average annual salary for each of those 47 years is $65,785. For the strength coaches, I made the following assumptions. 1 is a 4-year undergraduate degree, attending a public institution as an in-state student, the total cost of which, according to Google, is $108,584. I also factored in a 2-year master's program under the same conditions, public institution, in-state attendance, total cost $65,134. That means that the janitor has a 6-year head start of earning. The strength coaches start 6 years later than the janitors, and they also start $173,718 in the hole to account for the 2 degrees. I've also made the assumption that the strength coaches graduate university and immediately walk into an entry-level position using the salary data that I mentioned in the previous section. And again, I've assumed no breaks in employment up to the retirement age of 65. For the strength coaches, however, I've assumed a 5% annual increase in salary every single year to account for the fact that anyone who coaches that long is going to be getting numerous promotions and pay bumps, we would hope. So using the NSCA survey data, the starting salary was $39,176 a year, and the ending salary at 65 years of age was $275,801. Total career earnings during this period, $4,834,572. Average annual salary throughout that time, $102,863. Using the CSCCa data, starting salary, $36,835 a year. Ending salary at 65, $259,317. Total career earnings, $4,535,233. Average annual salary across that entire time span, $96,494. So let's now reflect on that data. Those finishing numbers for strength coaches, they're about what I would expect. Of the very few coaches I know who have stuck with it long enough to be coaching into their 60s, most earn in that $250,000 range. I do know of coaches that earn a bunch more at a younger age, but they are, of course, a tiny minority, and there's a lot more coaches earning it exactly the average or even less than that to even it out. So over the entirety of a career, strength coaches, thankfully for us, do make more money than the janitors who clean the gym. However, using these calculations, they don't actually break into the lead until age 46 using the NSCA data and age 49 using the CSCCa data. So all of the gains are made in the final 15 to 20 years of the career. This, of course, makes the massive assumption that you actually stay in coaching long enough to hit that point. It also makes some other highly unlikely assumptions, including if you want to get to the level of coaching where someone is going to be paying you in excess of $250,000 a year, you're probably going to have some breaks in your employment and spend some time on the sidelines. So you can actually expect those career numbers to be lower than they are in the data that I've provided. Likewise, the oversupply of coaching labor relative to jobs means that it's unlikely that every coach is going to leave university and immediately walk into a job. It's not uncommon these days to see new graduates have to wait 2 years or more before getting hired, and even then, it might not be a full-time salaried position. So again, those numbers are going to have to come down. Let's also consider some of the non-monetary issues that the coaches have to contend with compared to janitors. Nobody is going to be moving across the country multiple times in their career because the head janitor got a new job and you have to follow them. There's also unlikely to be sudden firings of janitorial staff because of a management change at the top, whereas this is completely par for the course as strength coaches. Likewise, there's no student debt and there's no paying to maintain your accreditation as a janitor so that you can continue to clean the floors. Again, not the case with strength coaches. The second you graduate, that student debt is accumulating interest year after year. It takes decades to pay off. And of course, you have to pay a couple of grand a year to maintain your status as an accredited coach, which you cannot work in a collegiate or pro environment without. In fact, at the very beginning of this video, I made the assumption of a regular 40-hour work week for coaches, which anyone who has coached will tell you is quite fanciful. The reality is going to be closer to 50 to 60 hours a week. So the coaches will work anywhere from 25 to 50% more hours throughout their career than the janitors. So what happens if we take that hypothetical janitor and we have him or her work the same 50 hours a week as a strength coach? Well, now the career earnings gap drops to just $1 million between the janitors and the strength coaches over the course of a career. At 60 hours a week, the janitor actually ends up ahead again. Now, you might argue that it's not realistic for a janitor to be working 60 hours a week into their mid-60s, but I would say neither is a strength coach walking into a job out of university and never getting fired. So it evens out. What can we take from this data? Well, one is if you're going to coach, do it because you love to do it. If you're doing it for financial reasons, you're literally better off sweeping the floors than coaching them. Once you decide you're going to coach, you need to stay in it for a long ass time because the lion's share of your career earnings won't hit until you're into your 40s and beyond. And if you quit, you're going to get all of the debt and all of the hassle with none of the upside. Where you start from and how fast your pay rises matters, obviously. So always fight in the front end for the biggest salary that you can and for the biggest and most frequent bumps that you can. That might mean moving organizations and locations a lot, but if you can bear it, do it because it has that big of an impact when you're earning power. Now, without question, I think the most impactful thing that you can do is to take matters into your own hands. Let's imagine that whilst you're in college, you get a garden variety personal training certificate that takes a weekend to get, and you manage to put together 5 sessions a week at $50 an hour, and that equates to $1,000 a month of additional income for, let's say, 1 to 2 additional hours of work a day, 5 days a week. We'll call it 1 hour for the session, an additional hour of prep and breakdown and travel and all that kind of stuff. If you can continue to maintain those same hours throughout your career, and increase your productivity, so your total earnings from that side income by 5% a year, which in my experience is nothing at all in the private sector. By the age of retirement, you've made an additional $2 million in career earnings versus the regular strength coaches for a total 45% bump in your earnings. And not only will you be better off financially, you'll be more secure when you get fired, not if everyone gets fired, and you'll also have an off-ramp from coaching if and when you decide that the profession is no longer for you. And that is exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. That's why Money Moves exists. And you can head over to callmekia.com/moneymoves and watch the presentation if you're interested in starting something like this in your own career. As ever, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, share, and comment to let the algorithm know. And if you have any additional topics that you'd like to see covered on this channel, just let me know and I'll be happy to help. Thanks. Thank you very much for watching that video. Daddy loves subscribers, so click here to subscribe. If you'd like to watch another video, you can do that by clicking here. See you soon.